Hey, everybody, and you are listening to the Soberful podcast. I'm Veronica.
And I'm Chip.
So, we are continuing a series here that we have started of subjects that we actually can't believe that we haven't talked about yet. We have just recently hit on a couple of things where
when
we're
you
like,
said that
have
this
we
was going
really
to be
not
the
done an
title,
episode?
I said, no, we've done that. And I scrolled through the list of things over and over again. I thought, I must have missed it. I went back again. No, it's not there. Couldn't believe it. But FOMO it is.
No. So we're going to be talking about FOMO and the fear of missing out. Now, to be fair, we have talked about it in multiple episodes. So we've just not done built a whole episode around it. So it's not that we've not mentioned it, but no, I was the same. I was like, we have to have done that. Yeah. And so we have, this podcast has been running for over 6 years and we have guests and stuff, but like, I did wonder if we would run out of topics to talk about, but no, not only have we not run out of them, we actually haven't covered all the really important ones.
Yeah.
So I want to say that the biggest reason people give for not wanting to stop drinking is the fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that over and over and over and over. Yep. And I'm sure you have too.
Yep.
And it was definitely, that was a big thing for me because I was in my 20s and it wasn't a fear of missing out. I was completely convinced I would miss out. I knew I was going to miss out. It was a fact. I was going to miss out on fun and lots of other things.
Yeah.
If I didn't drink alcohol. Now, what's interesting is the fear of missing out is often undefinable. Like people will say fun, number one, but there's a lot of like undefinable things that
it's friendships. It's
all
kinds of activities, all kinds of things. And I'm sure we'll get around to covering this, but I also, but when we talked the other day about, oh God, we haven't done FOMO, we better do it. I started thinking about it and I thought, okay, well, I obviously had that when I first got clean. I thought, well, I can't, I'm floating around. I don't belong to a proper group. I used to belong to a group who were my drinking buddies and my using buddies. So I used to belong to them and I wasn't missing out. I mean, occasionally I might think that a group were more gregarious and had more fun than I did. And I think I could feel that even when I was drinking and using. But of course, when you've got alcohol and drugs to kind of soften that emotional pain, it doesn't feel quite so acute. But when I got sober, that did come in. But the more I've thought about it before coming here today, I thought, do you know what? I had this as a child. I had this when I was young. I can remember we lived in a very isolated house, not connected with anyone, wasn't in a town, so you couldn't miss. And I can remember, being at home thinking, what's everybody else doing? And I'd go back to school because I went to boarding school, and they'd all go, oh, we did this, we did that, we did this. And I hadn't done anything really except be at home riding my bicycle. That was it. And I used to do that on my own mostly. So I think I had this, I felt fear of missing out on because my parents wouldn't include me in the living room or the drawing room. So I felt disconnected from them. And I think this has been certainly part of my sort of makeup all the way through my life. I think I didn't feel that I belonged. I felt that other families, I would look at other families, I think, why can't my family be like that? I'm missing out on something here. I'm missing out on good parent. I didn't phrase it like that, but I thought those parents are better than mine. And I would say they interact with people. I didn't use that phraseology, but I definitely had a sense of, God, this is a much nicer place than my home. And I think I've had it for a long time. And I still get it today.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I see that in my kids. It is a very kid thing, and I remember having that as a kid. I mean, I'm just thinking that now because we just had where we lived, we have a pool, a community pool, and they had a little party at the weekend. And like, my kids were off. Like, it's like they'll see, and there's a big thing. They just want to be in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And then, God, I was just thinking, I don't want to get derailed by this, but I was thinking, gosh, I can't imagine now what it must be like, because we have talked about this, when you're on Instagram and you see pictures of a party or something.
Absolutely.
And that, it's one thing hearing about it, it's another thing seeing it.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a kind of a human trait that we have.
So do
right?
I. So do I. Yeah.
It's about connection and being included.
Yeah, which is the one thing that we think that drinking is going to do for us. We think it's going to make us inclusive, but actually our behavior usually excludes us from people. Certainly, not everybody, but a lot of us become boring. We become boring drunks. So we don't get invited to things. We don't get asked out because people know we're going to be a pain in the arse. So we kind of miss out there as well. But I mean, I will really just reiterate what you just said, is that I think it was one thing, me, when I was young, thinking that maybe I was missing out. It was a very abstract thing. I didn't know that there was an invitation. Sometimes I did, I suppose. There was an invitation to a party I didn't get invited to. But it was all pretty vague and abstract. Nowadays, it is absolutely right there in your face. You did not attend this party. You did not get invited to this. You were left out. And so it's not just a fear. Sometimes it's the ROMO. It's the reality of missing out. I think it's a human condition, but I do think we make it exaggerated because when we drink, we isolate ourselves from people. We become much more insular. Our world becomes smaller and smaller. We lose sight of how we're coming across to people. We lose, we forget or don't register how our behavior is making us socially unacceptable and kind of difficult to be around, even within a family, perhaps, that our behavior separates us from them. So I think we lose sight of that. And we also just probably want to be able to isolate ourselves so we can drink excessively. And, it's not a very social communal activity when you get to that stage of drinking. Certainly, I didn't want to mix with other people, although, gosh, that's interesting. As I was saying that, I can remember I once had a squat in West London and it overlooked my dealers. And I could look out of the window and I had a tiny little room. And I could look out the window and I could see my dealer's house, loads of people there. And I would think, I haven't got any money. If I had money, I could go over there and I could join them. But I couldn't. So I'd just sit in this room hours and hours and hours looking out over this other flat. So that was painful. But I'd isolated I'd brought that on myself by my behavior. I wasn't trustworthy. So, yeah.
I think let's deconstruct this. I think the number one thing that people are scared of missing out on is fun. Is the first thing. And I want to say fun is not a frivolous thing. It's not like, I think fun is really important. Like, it's really, really important to have fun.
It's essential.
It's essential. Yeah, it's not.
If sobriety isn't fun,
it is essential. Yeah.
Yeah. I've said it for years. If sobriety isn't fun, or if being clean isn't fun, you're not going to stick around. What's the point?
No, God no.
So
no.
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing, and then that people are scared of missing out on. But then we have to kind of dig a bit deeper, because this idea of fun is very nebulous.
Yep.
And we're quite dishonest with ourselves about fun in relation to our drinking. You don't realize it until you look back. It's actually a really sad place to be if you only know how to use alcohol to manufacture fun. That's quite but you don't see it at the time. I was talking to someone the other day about this. It was a client saying, like, back in the day when you were, like, she was talking when she was at college, and she said, we would drink and we didn't know where the night would take us. Like, we'd just go on this kind of adventure. And I said, I remember that. I remember that as, like, earlier as a teenager. But I remember that just sense of excitement. And you just didn't know where the night was going to take you. You'd end up here, you'd end up there, you'd meet these people, this comical thing would happen. But, you'd have comical stories to tell for weeks afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I would have told you back then that I was having fun. And I want to say that there was fun there. But there was always a cost. There was always a cost. Now, at the time, I couldn't see the cost, and I didn't care. I didn't care about the cost. The fun seemed to outweigh the cost. But that period is very brief, and then it ends. And she said, because she said, now I have a drink, I know exactly where it's going to take me. Like, there's no wild adventure. I know exactly what's going to happen, and very quickly. And I think we often are drinking to try and get back to that feeling. And there is something that wild. I mean, I do recall it. It is this. It was also this sort of. It's that becoming an adult. There's something. There's a rite of passageness to it, I think.
No, definitely. I mean, I started using drinking in the early 60s in swinging London 60s. I mean, it was a really exciting time to be alive. I think society was changing. It was fun, and my using was not out of control. The consequences were nil, really. No, they weren't nil. Actually, that's a bit of a fib.
Manageable.
Manageable.
Yeah.
Manageable.
I think that's it. The consequences were manageable.
Yes, exactly. So, and it was exciting and it was fun. And in the first 2 years, I mean, and I think that's what I was subsequently looking for the next 18 years, was trying to recapture that sense of fun. And as you said, it's an illusion. It wasn't, the end of my using and drinking was not fun. It was absolutely miserable. And actually, but I perpetuated that myth, that because I would often say, oh, people who don't use and drink are boring. They don't have fun. They're not like us. They're boring. So, if anybody came, not that anybody usually did, but if anybody, I bumped into somebody who didn't use and drink, I think, God, you're boring, But actually, I was the boring one. And so then I got clean and sober. And then I had to overcome, because it's such a, as you said, it's such a human big thing, that I had to overcome shyness. I had to overcome the fact that I was, quite a withdrawn individual when I wasn't under the influence of substances. And I had to then, I saw other people who seemed to be able to relax, interact, tell jokes, have fun, laugh. And I remember I used to go to support meetings, self-help groups, and everybody would go for coffee afterwards, and they'd be in this cafe, and I'd be sitting there nursing a cup of tea or whatever it was. And everybody seemed to be able to be so gregarious. And funnily enough, I had a bit of a reaction to this recently. Somebody posted a lot of old photographs from London recovery programs when in the early days. And I'm not in any of the bloody photographs. And I'm thinking, where was I? What was I doing? Why wasn't I having fun like that? Why wasn't I in that gang? And I got a real sense of, well, what's wrong with me? What was wrong with me? And so I mean, I would even go so far as to say that basically, intrinsically in our DNA, we're a herd species. We like to be in a group. We don't like to be outside of that group. Makes us vulnerable. If we are pushed out of the group, pushed out of the community, we would have been historically very vulnerable. So I do think there is something intrinsically within us that wants to be protected by a group of people, be part of a group, that is quite deeply within us. But I think, that's just generally a human thing. But I think it's something to really overcome, because sobriety has to be fun. There's no doubt about it. Wherever you go and see sober people, and most people who are part of Sober For or listen to this podcast have probably, experienced a sense of community and seeing people enjoying themselves without drinking and using, or maybe they haven't, I don't know. But I think it doesn't come straight away. It's not as if you get sober and suddenly you're able to do those things. You have to kind of work through it. You have to learn. You have to be prepared to build up. You have to be prepared to be uncomfortable, which is something we don't readily grasp. And I think that's what makes the idea of joining a group of people to not miss out and be part of something is very difficult. I think it's intrinsically very difficult at the beginning to feel confident enough about how you are and who you are as a person to join a group.
Now, what we're actually talking about here is what this all boils down to is perception. It is our perception that we need alcohol to have fun, that alcohol is the best way to have fun, and to be drunk is the best fun that there is to be had. That is a perception that becomes a belief that we live over and over. And this is why it feels so hard, because we're trying to break out of, we have to break out of those beliefs. Because I want to say, for everybody at the beginning, you just can't get your head around it.
No.
You just can't. Like, I could not conceive that I would not be boring and grey for the rest of my life. It was inconceivable for me. Someone's cutting the grass outside, if you can hear it.
Yeah.
And that was a perception and a belief that I had, that I believed to be true and to be fact. And the only reason that I stopped believing, and I believed that, and the only reason I stopped drinking alcohol was I was making a transaction that my anxiety would go away if I stopped. And I was prepared, okay, I'll settle for that. If it means I'm not going to have anxiety and panic attacks and I'm never going to have fun again, I'll take that deal, because I can't live with the anxiety. But like, not having fun again, that really sucks. Like, it really sucks. I'll just have to read a lot of books or something.
Yeah. I mean, and I know you worked at my rehab, and we used to do fun activity every Friday afternoon, and there was a reason for that, because we wanted people to, and we'd organise everybody to go out and do 10-pin bowling or whatever it was, pottery, or going camping, or
Laser
whatever it was.
Quest. We did some mad things that were hilarious.
But it was just pushing people's, because every time people would go, "What are we doing today?" We go, "We're going to a pottery today." They go, "Oh, blood! Oh my God, that's a," and then they'd come back and they go, "God, that was all right, actually. That was quite fun."
Yeah.
And it was trying to teach people to kind of just push their little, push their safety barriers a little bit, and have a go at it, because that's the thing about FOMO, is that you can you can do a lot of kind of, "Oh my God, I'm not part of that group. I'm not part of that group. I'm not part of that group." But actually not saying, "Okay, well, what do I have to do to become part of that group?" And as you said, also looking at what is it I'm actually missing out on, because I've been thinking about this, and I'm thinking sometimes even today I can feel FOMO. I think I get it if I'm around very wealthy people, which I do occasionally do, and they've got seemingly no financial problems, no worries, life's quite easy, and I think, why can't I be like that? Why can't I be part of that group? And of course, I'm never going to be part of that group. But why? There is a sort of, "Oh, I'm not part of that group. I've got to, but I've got to, that's a ridiculous statement, really, because I've got a beautiful life. I've got everything I need, and I've got a lovely life. But I can still be looking over the horizon and thinking, oh, there's a group I'm not belonging to. I want to belong to them. I'm not belonging to them. So I'll sit here and have FOMO about it, And and I think it's all about sort of comparison, shine. And there's so many elements of human behavior mixed up in this.
Yeah.
But in terms of sobriety, it's a really important thing to address, because first of all, as you said, what are you actually, people say, "Well, what am I going to do at a wedding?
What are you frightened of missing out on?"
Yeah, exactly. Because they say, "What are you going to do?"
The 2-day hangovers?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, somebody said to me, "Oh, I've got a wedding to go to. What the hell am I going to do?" And I said, "Well, what did you do at the last wedding?" And they went, "Well, oh, okay, yeah, I got there and started the champagne, and I got hammered, and I fell over on the dance floor, and I got thrown out of the wedding." "Oh, okay, so that's what you're missing out on. Okay, well, you worried about that, or do you think you could cope with missing out on that?" And actually, then they went to the wedding and came back and said, "I got bored after about 2 hours and left." And so I think it's our perception of fun. I mean, God, when I really look at what I was doing for the last 18 years of my life before I got sober, it's like, you want to go back to that? Because it doesn't look like much fun to me. It wasn't fun. It was a miserable ordeal of kind of, with little tiny flashes of fun, maybe once a fortnight or something.
That would never ever worth the cost. The return on the investment was just not worth, and just not worth that little bit. Yeah, the cost was just not worth it. And I want to go back to if your vehicle for having fun, connection, belonging is alcohol. If you have no other vehicle to that, that's not a good place to be.
No,
that's not a good place to be, because it's artificially generated, and it lacks depth and substance, doesn't it? It just doesn't. It's not. I mean, I've had my arms around people like singing in a bar and avoided them in the grocery store the next day. Like, there's just something not so real about it. So, yeah, you can have fun with alcohol. I'm not going to deny it, but the cost is too high. And then you nailed it. When you break it down, what people are doing are actually telling themselves a fantasy story in their head. And the fantasy story is, this time it will be different. Like this wedding that I go to, it will be different. Whereas, there's the reality and there's the fantasy story based on your perception and faulty beliefs. Like what is actually going on here? I remember, so I went, I believed this. I believed my life was over, and for the first several months, I wouldn't say it was boring actually, but I would say it was quiet. There wasn't any really going out. I went, found some friends, went to movies. I rollerbladed. I went to a lot of meetings. I had coffee. That was about it. And I remember there was a group of us roughly the same age, and we wanted to go out. We wanted to go dancing. And so we agreed, we were all sober. And so we went, we wanted to get dressed up, go dancing, do what most 20-somethings do. So we went, there was about 5 or 6 of us. We went to a bar, we ordered our Coke, Cola, or whatever, and we danced a bit, and we went home at 11:30, and it was weird. It was weird. And then we did it again. And then we did it again. And then it was fine. And then I discovered, because I'm an extrovert and I love to dance, I can go out and dance my arse off. I can go out and do all of this. And then this perception begins to shift. I remember going to a big concert when I was about 18 months sober. And I feel like it was you too, but I might be wrong. I went with a bunch of friends who drank. Tickets were expensive. We had to go to London, to get a hotel, and I'm like, and they were from Australia and New Zealand. So they were very into doing this, because it's hard in Australia and New Zealand to see big artists, because not many people go there or whatever. So and then I was like, they're at the bar. They're missing this song, or they were in the toilet because they were in the bar. And they missed a lot of it. And I just had that's when it tipped for me. I just had this massive, I'm having more fun than they are moment. Where I'm just like, oh, and then I've never looked back. I've never, everything I can do it all. It's fun, but that doesn't happen on day 3.
No, it doesn't. But I think this FOMO can be not just about, as we've said, a fun activity or a fun event. It can be about your perception of other people's lives. And for instance, I remember when I first, I did go to self-help. I still do go to self-help groups. But I would sit there and I would listen to people who seemed to have their life together, who were 3 or 4 years clean. And I thought, I want to be there. I want to be part. I'm missing out on something. There's something I'm not part of. I'm frightened of not being as together as you are. You look. It was kind of jealousy. It's a kind of jealousy. There's a lot of jealousy involved in FOMO, I think, sort of envy and jealousy, which are definitely different things. But I think, I would look at people. I thought, I want to be like you. I wanted to be 5 years clean in 3 months, because I wanted to have that, what I saw as sort of calmness and not serenity, but sort of they had their lives together and mine wasn't together. I didn't have a group of friends. But
is that more envy?
Well, it probably is envy, yeah. But I think it's part of I mean, I'm sort of probably expanding FOMO a little bit too far in my head because I've had too long to think about it, but which is a big mistake. But I do think there is something about I'm missing out on the way they live their life. I'm missing. I'm not part of that group. I'm not part of that gang. So I do think it can be. I do think it can be more than just I'm missing out on going to parties. I'm missing out on relationships, for instance. I'm single. Other people seem to be in relationships. What am I missing out on? I'm missing out on that, security and stability of a relationship. For somebody who's been married twice in recovery, that's quite a statement. But there we go. Yeah.
I think also the FOMO comes with my client group because they're older. It's not really about partying and clubbing or anything like that. It's like there's a big FOMO of like, oh, but at the end of my day, we sit on my deck and we have a bottle of wine and we watch the sunset and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, you can do all of those things. Or you don't need wine to sit on your deck and chat with your partner and watch a beautiful sunset and catch up with the day. You just believe you need wine. And it comes down to this belief is there is an event like going night clubbing or a concert or sitting on your deck. And if I add alcohol to the event will be improved.
Yeah.
And that's the bit we have to question and go, because then I'll say, well, what happens? Well, we end up finishing the wine and usually starting another one. And I often fall asleep on the couch, or like I wake up and I feel like crap, or I wake up at 2 and I'm like, okay, so let's look at the bigger picture there. We can do all of this is, if I want anybody to hear anything from this, it's you don't miss out on anything. You can do everything sober and it's better. It's your belief and perception that's stopping you.
Yes. I think one thing, you just sort of kind of said it slightly there, but I think one thing that is consistent amongst people who are coming into sobriety is that end of the day relaxation, in inverted commas, relaxation, end of the day, full stop, put an end to the stress, put an end to the worry. I come home and I have some wine or I have some alcohol or whatever it is, and that's the end of my day. And that is something that I think people consistently say to me, how am I going, I'm going to miss out on that activity. I'm going to be missing out on the opportunity to do that. And I kind of get that, I think. I mean, I know that, I think I've talked about this before. But I mean, as you said, it may have been 6 years ago. So hopefully people have got short-term memories. But I remember, working really hard at the rehab, coming home and not being able to unwind, not being able to relax. It would take me ages for the adrenaline to go. And by that time, it was almost bedtime. And I would compare myself to a couple of my friends who worked just as hard as I did. But at the end of the day, I knew they would go home, have a couple of glasses of wine, not necessarily alcoholic drinking at all. I mean, but just taking the edge off. And I think that is something that a lot of people suffer from. They fear missing out on being able to take the edge off the end of the day. And it's trying to teach people to kind of, well, did you really just have a couple of glasses of wine or a glass of wine and take the edge off the day? Or did you drink a bottle of wine? And did you, which is probably the reality. But I think that would be a consistent fear that people have, that they're going to miss out on the ability to close down their day quickly and sort of in a relaxed fashion. And I think they've got a point, really. I mean, I definitely noticed that, gosh, it's a bit annoying, actually, not being able to kind of relax. And I mean, I've subsequently learned that, playing a game of golf, going swimming, going for a walk, just going for a walk around the block can make all the difference in the world. But there are things that I can do to help that, rather than sit there with FOMO thinking, oh, God, I'm missing out on this. But actually, if I do, there are things that I can do to alleviate that. But I just often choose not to do them. And that's my fault,
Yeah, and it comes down to, I mean, you can do all of these things. You can have a glass of wine or 2 or 3 or whatever. You just have to be prepared to pay the cost.
Yeah.
And I'm not prepared to pay the cost. So I completely accept that I can't do those things because, I'm just what you were saying about the end of the day. Yeah, I'm the same. I have other ways of unwinding and relaxing and, just kind of breaking up the day a bit. And I don't, would never sort of think about having a drink. There's lots of different things I do, but the reason that I have eliminated alcohol is so I can actually then not miss out on lots of other things, because that's actually the perverse thing that was happening, is alcohol was causing me to miss out on tons of other things. There's so many different things in my life. Like I traveled around America in my, like when I was 19, 20 with my best friends, and we did it on the Greyhound bus. This is in the 90s. And we would get somewhere, and do you know the first thing that we did? We would find the Irish bar.
Okay.
Because the Irish bars in America have expats in them. Again, we're in America. No idea why we wanted to find the expats. Well, I think we wanted to find the expats because we knew the expats would drink the way we wanted to drink.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the Grand Canyon really hungover, and like seeing it and kind of spending some time in the like minibus because I just felt so crap.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember countless things like that happening where I didn't go, or I went late, or I was so hungover I didn't really enjoy it, but I checked the box and said I saw the thing or whatever. And actually, alcohol caused me to miss out on so much in my life. Opportunities for career, studies, like so actually, for that small thing, it was causing me to miss out on so much. And when you see that, then the trade wasn't acceptable.
Yeah, you've reminded me of an event that happened when in the midst of my using. A girlfriend of mine, well, my girlfriend at the time, got arrested in Australia for smuggling drugs between Thailand and Australia, and she was
Jesus.
Yeah, it was bad. She got 6 years in the end. Yeah, and not funnily enough, she died a few weeks ago, which was very sad. So I managed to get it together, unbelievably, to go out to Australia. I went to Sydney, beautiful place. I spent the whole time in King's Cross trying to score drugs. I didn't see the Opera House. I saw the Opera House across the harbour. I didn't see the Outback. I saw nothing. I just went to King's Cross, which is the sort of drug centre of Sydney, and spent my time trying to score drugs. That's all I saw of Australia, and Parramatta Prison, which is where she was. Other than that, that's all I did. And then I flew back again about 10 days later. That's all I saw. And it's like, talk about missing out on the opportunity. So, yeah, right as you said at the start, it's all about a perception of, really, what are you frightened of missing out on? Was I frightened of missing out on sitting in a flat in Australia when I could have been doing all sorts of things? The reality of my life was I didn't do things. But I do think there is something about that kind of prevents people getting sober, is that, I think FOMO is actually a really big thing, and it needs to be addressed. And I'm really glad we're doing this podcast eventually, because I think that's one of the biggest reasons that people don't get into sobriety. And I can remember, willing as I was, when I was in rehab, I remember sitting on a sofa saying to somebody, what do people do? What on earth do people do?
I couldn't even fathom,
couldn't
beyond me.
What do people do? And I thought, I couldn't get it in my head. Well, what do they do? If you're not sitting in front of a television, what do you do? And, subsequently, I've discovered that there's a lot of things you can do. But at the time, it was like, I couldn't work it out. So I think then when you come into sobriety and you see people, because you come across people either through in a group like this or whatever it is, you do see people, but also you're looking back and you're walking past pubs. I do it on my way from where I work to where I stay in London. I have to walk past about 6 pubs that are overflowing with people seemingly have a great time. There's lots of laughter, lots of banter, lots of kind of chatter. And I think, well, am I missing out on anything? And actually, I learnt very quickly that no, I don't enjoy sitting in a pub that is designed to sell alcohol, standing around with drunk people most of them are not all drunk, but I mean, they're certainly, after about half an hour, they're not quite themselves. They're a little bit off kilter. Lots of sort of boorish banter and lots of sort of, I don't know, unnecessary flirting and God knows what else. But it's like, do I really want to? No, actually, I was quite glad to get back to my hotel. But we are presented visually with a lot of places, either on television or, through the media, through social media. We're presented endlessly with people having an amazing time. And well, what am I doing? Well, I'm sitting here sober. And I think most people, when they're early in sobriety, are lacking in confidence, a little bit shy, not quite sure how to interact with people socially. I can make that generalization that's how very few people I know give up alcohol and bang, they're confident and social and can engage in kind of thing. I think that's a process you have to go through. As you said, you have to kind of do it a few times to learn how to do it before it becomes much easier and you're not frightened of it and stuff. And, and I think it's something that everybody has to learn how to overcome. And how do we do it? We do it by sticking around. And I know that's a sort of, you'll hear lots of people, you'll hear us say it endlessly. We'll say, well, if you stick around, it'll get better. I promise you. Don't judge sobriety on the first 3 months, because it's quite hard work in the first 3 months. You're having to readjust your life completely. You're having to completely change it around. And I think, you just have to keep trying things. And so if you feel that you are missing out, okay, well, first of all, as we've sort of said, and you cover, are you really take a good look at what you're missing out on? Because you'll probably find,
is it fantasy or is it reality?
Exactly. And the chances
then what are you actually missing out on in life because you are drinking?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You're missing out on, people who are hungover on a Sunday. Maybe they think they've had a great time on Saturday, but they're spending all day Sunday in bed because they're missing out on going and have breakfast in the park or something. I don't know. I mean, that would be a rather just glib example, but you are missing out on a lot of things. Your drinking will make you miss out on a lot of things. But I think it's a very valid fear to have, especially in early recovery, that you haven't got the tools to socially engage or take the risk of socially engaging or actually preempt social things yourself that are entertaining and fun and difficult. Because usually, if we're going to sort of do like fun activities and fun events and fun things to do, it usually requires a certain amount of courage to sort of overcome, even something like 10-pin bowling. Am I doing it right? That sort of self-obsessed kind of thing that can often take the edge off enjoyment, because we're so self-obsessed about how we're standing, if we're doing it right. Like your example of dancing, probably the first time you did it,
it was so weird. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's
weird, uncomfortable. Yeah.
But after you've done it a few times, you think, oh no, I can do this. Actually, I can do this. So you have to kind of. It does require a certain bit of persistence, but then the old cliche that if you put. I remember somebody said to me in rehab, I said, it looks bloody hard work, this stuff, all this recovery stuff. It looks hard work. And they said, well, if you put 25% of the effort you put into your using, into your sobriety, you'll be fine. And I thought, well, that sounds like a good deal. But I mean, yeah. And when I think about it, I mean, everybody's story is different. But, mine was, I would spend all day hustling around for drugs and alcohol for 15 minutes of feeling good, probably, maybe not even as much as that, 15 minutes. And it wasn't a good deal at all. A lot of effort required for a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of what I would consider to be pleasure, but it wasn't really. Yeah.
And I've done all the things now sober, and I can report they're all better and they're all more fun. I've done everything. I've been to and it all depends on your age, right? I've been to music festivals and camped. I've been to nightclubs. I've been to gigs. I don't really. I mean, I still like live concerts and stuff. Done them all sober. They're all better. Way more fun. I've danced. I've been at the front shouting lyrics. I've done all the things. One of the things my husband and I like to do, and my husband doesn't drink. I mean, he will have an occasional drink. He doesn't really drink, once in a blue moon. And one of the things we like to do when we're on our own for date night is when we go out for dinner, we like to sit at the bar. We just like to sit at the bar. We like to sit next to each other. We chat to people. We chat to the bartender. I always get a nice alcohol. We get a nice alcohol-free. It's just like a little thing that we like doing. And it doesn't, you can do all the things. Don't do that in the first 30 days. But, know, I just, you can do everything. You can watch your sunsets. You can, I like a good pub. I think the only time I was going to a bar now in America was to see music or to eat. It's the same really in England, but like when I go home, I like going to a pub for a Sunday roast. I like a pub for a Sunday roast, not a restaurant, but a pub.
Yeah.
There's a pub atmosphere in the winter when the fire, There's some I used to go. I had a friend who also didn't drink, but she never had a problem. She just didn't drink. We liked watching the soccer, the football, and we would go to the pub for the atmosphere and thoroughly enjoy ourselves. So there's all. This boils down to is perception and beliefs, and this is what we have to break. And it's you have to ask yourself about the cost.
Yeah, and I think as you were talking, then I had something to say and I've forgotten it. So I have a bit of a fear of missing out on my memory, which seems to have eluded me. But I think, I mean, I know what it was. I've just been to Italy with my wife, which is in itself something that I would never have done when I was drinking. The idea of spending money and traveling, I didn't do it. So we went to Bologna in Italy and we spent all day walking around, just popping into places we didn't know, walk through a doorway and suddenly there's a bloody great cathedral and up towers and did all sorts of things. I would not have done that when I was drinking. I might have gone to Bologna, but I would have stayed in my Airbnb. I would have waited. Where's the best place to go? Where are the best bars? Yeah. I've spent most of it. But we saw so much because we were just open to exploring things, looking at things. And we joined in we were near the university and they were all protesting. And it was just very different to how I would have engaged in a holiday when I was drinking. It was like I was up for exploring everything, looking at everything.
Holidays and travel is so much better sober.
Yeah.
So much better. No, hands down.
Yeah.
The only reason people think you have to drink on vacation is because it's like you're not at work, you don't have to get up for work, there's no people just ruin their vacations.
Yeah, I think they do,
You're just hungover, you're just repeating what you do at home with sunburn.
Yeah.
It's so much better without you have adventures, you see just all of that. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. So it's a legitimate fear. It's a legitimate process to go through.
It's a process. It's a process.
Yeah. And if you are prepared to take that risk, and I know that's something I often say is, if you don't take risks, you're not going to grow. And you do need to risk to overcome FOMO. But if you do, it's definitely worth the effort. Guaranteed. I'll guarantee that one. Yeah.
So we'd love to know your thoughts on this. FOMO turns to JOMO, the joy of missing out. It increases the more sober you get. I'm just so glad. I'm so glad that I don't drink, but I'm so glad that I know that I don't need to get all the things that I want. That's it, actually. I'm really glad that I know that I don't need to have fun, relax, distress, reward myself, all those things. But it is a process that will take a little bit of time. But 6 months, 12 months, you'll begin to see things differently. And that's what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Good.
Okay. Make sure you're following us on whatever platform that you listen to this podcast, and we'll be back next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.